Hey everyone, how's it going? I am so excited to be streaming after so long. Hello, Meru, hello, Kushal, hello, Naveen. I see so many new names, and that's so awesome. Welcome to your first Twitch participation, Shalomkar. I am so happy to see you all here. Before I even dive into introducing myself, I think I should clarify this. Uh, Brownie points are literally abstract virtual points where we're like, oh, you're turning up and checking in. When I say points, there I don't know if there's any official point system in GHW this time. But yeah. Mm, Hello, hey Estelle. We will wait for a couple of more minutes just for people to trickle in. Usually it takes a while for people to see the announcement. But hi everyone, how are we doing today? It has been so I don't know if y'all have seen me around, but I'm streaming after more than a year, and I'm so excited to be here. Today's session, the first, so I'm going to be doing three streams for y'all. This is the first one. Second one will be later today, and then we'll be doing one more tomorrow in terms of technical streams, and we're going to try to build upon each other. And I am streaming today after a really long time. So I was just trying to figure out, like an hour before I was trying to practice the controls. So hopefully we're all good to go. But yeah, how are we doing today, folks? How many streams? How has GHW been for y'all? Are y'all enjoying GHW? Do y'all have a favorite stream yet? I know y'all love seeing UT stream. I was hanging around in one of his streams the other day, and y'all are so amazing. Y'all interact so much. So, how's GHW been for y'all? No, y'all haven't joined a lot of GHW streams lately. Take your time to answer. I don't know if my comments aren't loading or y'all aren't checking, but before we get started, I will be sharing the check-in link for y'all so that y'all can check in. Here you go. This is the check-in link, y'all. Please do make sure you check in. Oh, this is your first MLA stream. That is amazing. I am so glad to see y'all here. Today's stream is extremely beginner friendly. It is very basic. We won't be writing code. We will be writing a lot of, well, not a lot of code, but a bunch of code later in the second stream. But this stream, we're going to majorly go over some concepts, establish some analogies, and get prepared for the next stream. So the next stream today is building our own agent workflow. So how MCP servers work, how do you use them? It's all going to flow into this stream where we're going to build our own agents. I am so sorry about that. Yeah, so we have been a little slow in IST time lately, but hey, we're doing one today, and so we're doing two today and one tomorrow. And I know I'm running a mini event tomorrow in IST, India Standard Time as well. So I'm very excited for y'all. Yeah, and don't worry about ever staying back, right? Because everything gets recorded. So in terms of time zone, I know it's not fun not being able to interact with the coach, but yeah, don't stress or push yourself too hard. I've learned the hard way the last year and a half to not screw up my time zones at all. So folks, let's get started. And this is very interesting because I'm streaming after so long. It's going to be fun to establish some rules again, right? So the first session, like I've said, very simple, very basic. Feel free to pitch in and talk to me about what y'all are thinking, right? So today we're gonna talk about introduction to MCP and deploying your own. I have a couple of thoughts about what I mean by own, which is why I've left it at that. But let's get started, right? So hi folks, I'm Rithvi. Have y'all seen me before? I don't think so. I see a lot of people, um, new people here, which is amazing. I am so welcome y'all. Welcome to the MLH community. I have been a coach at MLH for over 4 years, and I used to do a lot of streams, and then things got busy, but I am back. And yeah, I run a studio called Frenzy.works. I'm a dev rel at CodeRabbit. We will look a little bit at CodeRabbit today, actually, from a MCP server point of view. So I'm very excited. And yeah, I see a bunch of comments. That is perfectly fine, Arva. You cannot keep up a lot of times, which is fine, but usually telling the coach that you're trying to do something, we love stopping for y'all to make sure that you catch up. Today we aren't, you don't have to keep up with anything in the first stream today. So sit back, relax, and just talk in the chat, okay? Great. So, yeah, I love making things and I love talking about it. If you ever go back and look at some other GHWs, me and Mary used to do a bunch of streams and I used to show a few stuff that I used to make. So you see this background, it's not a virtual background, it's the actual background. Like that's my wall with the pegboard and everything. Hi, hello, Roop. Welcome to the stream. But yeah, so that is what we're going to be doing today. So hello, everyone. I usually we're going to do a thought exercise in just a minute, but this is what we're going to basically looking at today. We will look at why do we need an MCP, what is an MCP, architecture and components, what are the basic things, and I have actually gone and collecting a lot of really cool resources for y'all. So I am gonna show you as it is and send you the links from these people who've been teaching it across the internet. We can also look at a tiny code base. So first we will also look at the MCP official documentation, and yeah, I am so glad it was really great. We will be doing some hands-on session in the later session today. The first session, the first stream, we won't be doing a lot of hands-on things, but I'll be showing you a lot of things, so that you all know what things to look up and how to be prepared for the next session. But yeah, and then I'll also show you all the resources that I collected things from, so you all can bookmark them for yourself. Right, so let's dive right in. Okay, so since y'all are joining my stream, after a long time or for the first time, this is something that we do, right? Model context protocol. I'm sure y'all are all working with MCPs already or have looked into MCPs or at least have a basic idea of MCPs. If y'all think y'all have no clue what are MCPs, I assure you, y'all know what are MCPs. Okay? So I need y'all to think about the first thing that comes to your head, right? It doesn't have to be technical, it remotely doesn't have to be related to MCPs. Just the first image, the first thought that comes to your head when you think about MCPs, right? Um, I'm going to give you all around 3 minutes to do this exercise, right? So, just the first thing that comes to your head when you think about model context protocol. What is the first word, the image that comes to your head? And it can be fun, it can be quirky. It doesn't have to be technical, right? So the first thing that comes into your head when you think about MCP, the idea of this exercise is to get your intuition up and running and to tell you all that you all already have a good idea of what we're going to talk about, and then we'll connect the dots across the analogies as we go, right? So the first thing that comes to your head when you think about MCP. I love that. APIs, but for LLMs. That's a great way to put it, right? Connector. Beautiful. Love the answers that y'all are giving. Anything else? Just so one of my favorite answers from a previous stream, I used to do streams for APIs, and I was like, oh, what's the first image that comes to your head when you think of APIs? And one of the folks said, oh, my sibling, because you ask your sibling to do stuff and they go like, oh, get me water and whatever. So like, think about things like that, right? Think about intuition analogies. Okay, that's a beautiful answer, right on point technically. Automation of AI. Interesting. HTTPS. Good, good. Just yeah, the first thing, the first word that comes to your head. Good job. All right, I'm going to give you all another minute to come up with fun answers and then we'll move on. But great answers, y'all. Each one of you spot on. I know, right? I know. Someone's like, oh yeah, API, my sibling. I'm like, yeah, that exactly. Me too. Remote control. Interesting. Lovely. All right, folks, let's move on. If any one of y'all is still answering, I will address it. I have an eye on the comments, so don't worry about it, okay? But let's move on into talking about what can LLMs do. So before we talk about MCP, let's talk about LLMs themselves, right? Wait, exactly. Great, great answer. So what do LLMs do? Can you all tell me what are LLMs and what do LLMs do? When I say or when I ask ChatGPT to do something, what is ChatGPT? Is ChatGPT an LLM? LLMs are large language models, right? All LLMs are supposed to do is predict text. So all your smart agents, or agents are smart, but all your smart LLMs are only supposed to predict text, right? So ChatGPT, right? Is ChatGPT a model? Well, not really. It is Chat, it is GPT. GPT is the model. So you have one application that you're connecting to a large language model. All large language models do is generate text, right? They generate and predict text, right? An agent is an LLM, right? A large language model that can predict text, plus a tool, right? Web searches, or comparing something, or basically an actual tool, right? Along with decision making, right? So you're letting the tool also have some kind of logic to make some decisions, right? Or use the information provided by the tool to make decisions, right? What is Jarvis, right? Jarvis is basically a bunch of different agents connected together. I love this answer. I absolutely love this answer. LLMs are autocomplete on steroids. This is a t-shirt quote. They index the web. Well, yes, they also index the web, but the decision making, the thinking, or like the different modules, at some point, I would love to do a stream about the different nodes that go into it. I think Jocelyn has been doing a really nice series of streams explaining these blocks. But yeah, LLMs are large language models. All they do is generate text, right? Their entire like output and whatever they do is eventually going to lead to generation of text. That is it, right? An agent is an LLM plus tool plus a bunch of decision making associated with the tool, right? So let's look quickly at how do you use a tool with an LLM, right? I promise you we're going to start talking about MCPs sooner or later. But before we even go into why we need MCPs, we're just going to break down what an agent, or why do we bother even connecting a tool to an LLM, right? So remember, LLMs, large language models, eventually and overall, all they are capable of doing is, for the most part, generating text by themselves, which is why we need to connect the tool, right? So, how that works is we're going to monitor LLM outputs for tool call tokens, which means we start running the LLM, and at some point, we're expecting it to call the tool. So, once it calls the tool, we pause the generation and execute the tool call. So, with code, obviously, right? So, we're going to tell them about, oh, okay, you executed it, but what to do next? And then you go in and capture the response and pass it back to the LLM. The LLM, based on that, generates more text and gives you the output, right? So this is what a tool call will look like, right? So we are telling the system message that, hey, you are a helpful assistant that can use tools when needed, right? And that is what the system has been told. So this is what your agent knows. Then as a user, I'm gonna go and ask the agent, hey, what's the weather like in Dallas? And the model recognizes that, oh, I should stop generating and issue a tool call, right? So then it generates a tool call. It says get weather, sends the arguments for the tools, right? And then the tool call ends. Once the tool call gets the answer, it then responds, which is generates text using the text from the tool call. Does that make sense, everyone? So now we know how the whole tool calling in LLMs, or rather in agents, work, right? So when does an LLM stop, do a tool call, or when does a model stop and do a tool call and then continues, right? Any questions here? Are we all on the same page? Okay, if you all have questions later also, we can come back and answer it, right? So this is what an example of a tool call would look like, right? Now, sure, checking the weather is a nice thing to do, but do you really want to use something so powerful to do something so simple? No, right? You want to do more complex things. You want to be able to do fun stuff like, oh, you know what? Why don't I let my LLM, which is so smart, book my tickets or order food for me? And that is where things get a little tricky, right? Because everyone is going to be doing things a little differently. Maybe not very differently, but a little differently, right? For example, if I want my agent to detect a git change, check the backend code, check the front end code, and then have another decision making power or do something else, things can get complex very fast with just the type of data that I'm handling, right? The different types of data that'll come is going to be very tricky to handle. Which is why we come to protocols. So let's go back and do the exercise again. What are protocols? Have you all heard of protocols in any other context? So MCP refers to Model Context Protocol, but have you heard of protocols in any other context? Yes, well, where have you heard of it? HTTP, lovely. That's an incredible answer. Good job. Have you all heard of protocols? What else do you think protocols mean? Have you heard of protocols otherwise outside rulebook? Lovely. Perfect answer. Exactly, right? Protocol is basically a set of rules, right? It's having a standard way of doing things no matter what. So there is a social protocol, right? Sometimes there are protocols in different situations, like, oh, if it's a fine dining place, there's usually a social protocol that differs there. If it's like a airport, it's different again, right? So that is what we mean by protocols. I love that answer as well. That's TCP/IP. Lovely, right? So let's dive into what looks like another protocol. This is an example of MQTT. Okay, have you all heard of MQTT? It's a type of IoT protocol. The idea behind a protocol is to standardize the whole concept of information exchange, right? MQTT helps IoT devices able to run on low data, transmit messages and accept messages. Exactly, it's a pub sub. Lovely, right? It's basically a pub sub protocol, which is, oh, the device knows exactly what to expect and what to do when a certain type of data type comes through, right? Great answers, everyone, right? Great answers. So this is an example of, so we know how we have a control header. So when the device is accepting MQTT messaging, it's going to be like, okay, first there's going to be a control header, then there's going to be the information about the remaining message, and then there's going to be the actual message, right? This is what a protocol looks like. And that is where our MCP comes into the picture. So the idea behind MCP, the Model Context Protocol, is to standardize the information for your LLM, right? What is one of the biggest problems right now with LLMs? Where do you think LLMs have been failing a lot? I'm going to give you all 1 minute to answer that. So the place where MCPs is very important, especially right now with the amount of different kinds of exactly getting the right data. Hallucination, right? Hallucination is a byproduct of losing context, right? Current context, precisely, right? Context engineering has been one of the biggest problems with LLMs right now. And imagine having another layer of complexity where the LLM has to figure out, oh, what data also to expect from which tool. That is where MCP is extremely important. This has been taken from Dscope. Dscope has some really cool videos on this, but the way they put it is it's the USB-C of the AI world, right? So the idea is after MCP, you have a gate check where you know that the LLM knows the standardized information to expect, and then it continues to do its job because it's one layer of complexity that we have reduced, right? Again, great answers, y'all. Right? Machine awareness. We want to reduce the complexity of the LLM having to do the decision making and make it easier for it to be able to handle the memory, right? So this is what the MCP architecture looks like, right? So you have the service. Now the MCP server has to be provided by the service, right? So if I am running, let's say the studio, right? If I have any kind of information that I need people to use for their decision making, let's say someone wants to make a schedule and is using an agent to make a schedule, right? And I am doing certain types of events. I need to make sure that my MCP server can provide their LLM with the correct data. So, as the service provider of events, I need to have my own MCP and maintain it. Got it? And then you, let's say y'all are using an agent to build up your schedule based on different logic that you've provided. You need to make sure that you consume the server data, right, using the MCP server. So a very good example here is Tempo, Windsurf, Cloud Code. We'll later look at Cloud Code and how it integrates a custom MCP server into its configuration today. But yeah, so any of these services basically or clients can consume MCP servers. Any service can also become a client to consume different service to add more context, right? I will show you all a really cool example today of an AI review tool where we consume a lot of context. So we have made a client to be able to connect to different servers to consume that context. Okay? So we'll look at that in just a second. All right, so let's look at some popular MCP servers. Do you all have any questions at this point? Have you all tried MCPs? How many of y'all have tried to build out an MCP server for yourself? And how many of y'all have connected to different MCP servers? Has anyone here tried to connect to a different MCP server? Just connected to some? Lovely. Have you all tried to create an MCP server yourself? No? Okay, I don't. If you all have or haven't, it's okay. We will look at the official documentation. Oh no, that is so sad. We will build out a proper server in the next stream today, not in the first stream. I'll probably wrap this up in the next 20 minutes maximum. Uh, it isn't. That's the fun part. It really isn't, right? Lovely. That's awesome. So it's not hard. And if you haven't, that's perfectly fine. We will first try to consume an MCP server on a different application. So for a client that already exists. And then we will try to build out an entire agent, which means we'll have a server that we'll consume from and do a bunch of decision making, right? That's awesome. I'm so glad you had fun, right? So we will first, we're not running any code in the first stream. I'm just going to show you a bunch of things, bombard you with information, and then we'll do a lot of things in the next stream. I'll break it down for y'all. Has anyone tried to use the OpenAI agent workflow yet? We will use that. Even that's an extremely cool tool to use. All right, great. So let's move on. So let me show you a bunch of really cool things. So, okay. First thing I want to show you is this, right? This is an MCP inspector. Later, I'm going to show you all what the code of an MCP server looks like, of a like a custom MCP server. An MCP server is any service, okay, which means you can connect other MCP servers to it and make that a server of itself for the client to consume, right? But before that, I'm going to show you all what a service consuming MCP server looks like, right? So I'm going to use CodeRabbit AI, right? So I'm going to log in. So CodeRabbit AI is basically an AI code reviewing tool. So how many of y'all know where code reviews are used? So code reviews are basically a standardized process in production code bases where not anyone can just merge the code. Exactly, pull requests, right? So if y'all aren't aware of the Git principles and the GitHub protocols, we usually have a way to make sure that every code that goes into the code base has some kind of filters, right? So every time as an engineer, you first push code, then you raise a pull request for the code to get merged into your main code base, right? For that, someone has to review your code. So when you raise a pull request, usually at least a couple of senior engineers will look at that code before the code gets merged into your code base, right? So that is where CodeRabbit comes in. Now, as you can imagine, with so much code being written by AI, it can get a little tricky to maintain your standard of the code, right? And you've seen how many outages that have been happening. So I'm going to show y'all. So usually you want to give as much context to your pull request as possible, right? So this is what CodeRabbit has done. They have this entire page of MCP servers that you can connect to directly, right? So CodeRabbit itself acts like a client and consumes servers for additional context to the pull request and the code base, right? So I'm going to give you an example of how it runs. So I'm just going to go to a random repo of mine where I was just playing around with pull requests. This was my demo for the MCP server test. I connected it to CodeRabbit and I basically asked it that, hey, can you check if the MCP servers for Notion are connected? It did that. I confirmed that the Notion MCP server is connected, and it basically printed my entire Notion page, which I had here, and showed me wrong one. So let's go to this, and there we go, right? So it showed me this entire thing that I'd connected in my PR. So if you all want to recreate this, let me know. I can send you all the docs. But basically, this is a very good example of an MCP server and an MCP client, right? So from a client point of view, we can basically connect anything and everything here and give more context to your pull requests. Okay. How many of y'all have tried to use pull requests in your workflows? Amazing. I'm so glad to hear that. So if y'all want to talk more about pull requests, amazing. I'm so glad to see y'all have. Lovely. Just making sure, in case y'all haven't used MCP servers before, uh, sorry, if y'all haven't used pull requests before, let me know. I'm happy to walk y'all through the whole concept. Amazing, right? So let's go back to our PowerPoint. Okay, I'm gonna have to remove this and let's go back here. Okay, so this is another example of what an MCP server would look like. It's no longer Anthropic SDK, it's MCP SDK. I'm so glad to see someone of y'all have used it, right? So this is the MCP SDK that we'll be using later in the next stream. And this is an example of what I'm going to show you. This is taken from another tutorial, right? So we basically want to draft an email and gather information from our server, right? So This is essentially is what we're building, right? The MCP server. So what we're going to do, or what we would do, is we would install the UV package. UV package is a very fast, streamlined package from Astral that helps us deal with a bunch of optimizations. We'll then create a server using the MCP Python SDK. We will add. That's awesome. Using branches is always a really good idea. So I'm so glad you all are also using branches, right? We will see how what adding prompts looks like, how to add resource, add tools, and then you locally run it. I haven't deployed it yet, but I will show you what the local test looks like. Okay. Great. Let's move on. So first, you go around installing this UV package. Then you create a server using the Python SDK. This is how simple the process is, right? So just so that we're on the same page, I'm also going to get in the documentation for the Python SDK. So what we're doing is we're basically following everything from here. Okay. So let me move into this, right? So we're using the UV package installer, same thing that we did here. Then we are, you can also use the MCP CLI, by the way. We are not using the MCP CLI. But this is how simple it is, right? So you first just have to tell that, hey, MCP, and then give the MCP the name, and that is what it will do. Now it knows that the demo is the name of the MCP, right? So that's what we've done. Over here, we've basically called our MCP Ava. Okay. So let's go here and go on to the next one. Okay. Then we're going to add prompts before we add tools. So for adding a prompt, this is the official documentation, and this is exactly what we're following, right? We're saying, hey, mcp.prompt. We are defining the command, right? Uh, for greet user, this is the argument. This is our argument. This is what we're calling the prompt. We're giving the different styles that are available. For us, we don't have different styles that we're giving. And the system prompt is basically, hey, you are a virtual assistant. Two, the username will be the variable of the user using it, and you're going to help them with administrative tasks, right? And over here, in case you have different styles, you can also specify different styles, that hey, you are a friendly assistant, you're a senior assistant, so on and so forth. So you can be very creative here with the prompt, right? Once you add the prompt, you add the resources, right? Again, same thing taken from the official documentation. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to search for the correct. There we go, mcp.resource, right? These resources basically become available in your filter in the GUI as a resource that your agent will actually be using. Okay, so this is again what we've done. mcp.resource, the official documentation is telling to read a document and return the content. It's also giving a settings resource, so you can basically use the MCP to set the theme of the application. We are giving it two resources where we're letting it write a call follow up, a file.read, and we're returning the file.read, and the same thing for directory. So directory.csv is where we're keeping the directory of contacts. Okay. Uh, then we're going to add the tools. Tool call was associated right here in the beginning. So over here, a tool over here is a simple addition. We're making a simple calculator application here. For us, because we're writing an email, we have added the Gmail client and we have only given it a write draft tool. We are not giving it anything more, right? It's a simple agent that we're building using the MCP server. So we are going to quickly using our own MCP server. So the tool we're giving it is only for writing the draft email, right? And then eventually you run it on the STDIO. Do you all know the difference between STDIO and HTTPS, and why do you want to run it on STDIO? Has anyone heard of the different ways that you can run your tools calls on, or rather your entire MCP servers on? All right, so let me show you another very cool documentation of that. Let me find it. I had it saved up for you all right here. Nope, this is not it. Is this it? Nope. Okay, y'all, I had a really nice MCP server. Let me find it for y'all. Mm, okay, I'm gonna quickly give me 1 minute. I'm gonna pull it up for y'all so that we can go through it. So found I'm just gonna pull that up. There we go. So this person has written an AI cookbook. I'm gonna drop their link here in the chat for y'all to follow along. Right. So let me add this right here. Okay. And continue this in the slideshow. And there we go. Okay. So this is the difference between the different types of transport mechanism, right? The transfer mechanism is important because in certain production code bases, you can only deploy a certain kind. So usually there's a unified HTTP stream, which is a bidirectional streaming. Then what you can choose to do is you can have like a hybrid of exactly, right? That's a great way to put it. You can only connect one MCP server basically to it, which is a great way to put it. Thank you so much, Ritik. Right? So you have the MCP client, and you can possibly do this where you're sending it to the server using the HTTP post method, but you're receiving it via the SSE, right? This is for development and working with older MCP implementations, right? And then you have the STDIO transport, which is when you're building a single application integrations or during development, right? So during development, you can have multiple connected, but for production, you possibly want one of these two if you're using especially multiple server connections, right? Um, I have sent this to y'all. This AI cookbook has done a really good job deep diving into it, but not having to go into it too much. So, for example, the streamable HTTP has been introduced only on 24th March 2025. So, it's a very good way to understand why these older ones were used. Right? I'm going to give you all like 30 seconds on this page if you all are reading it. And I've already dropped the link to it in the chat, so you all can always use that to go through it. And then I'll pull up the PPT again. At this point, if you all have any questions, do let me know. Because post this, I'm going to show you all how the GUI looks like. Okay, anyone still reading it, or can we move on? I am happy to give you all a second in case you wanted, but again, I've already dropped the link to this in the chat. Okay, so then once you local run it and you run this, it's going to pop up this GUI. So let's look at this GUI. Did I lose it again? I did not. So it's going to open this thing called the MCP inspector, right? And when it does, you can basically see everything that's happening, right? So I have also opened my draft emails here. So this was me testing it earlier in the morning, the MCP server. So let's write another one, right? Let's try to do another one. So first, let's look at everything. So these were the resources that we connected in code, remember? So you can see all the resources that have been connected. Then we have all the prompts that we gave earlier, right? Global instructions. Then we have the tools, right? So you can If anyone wants to put in their email ID, I can try that. But basically, this is the recipient email. It just doesn't really matter, right? This is the subject. So, test for MCP server during GHW. Yay, it worked during GHW as well. And then I'm going to go ahead and run the tool. And it says success. Let's go and see if there has been another draft email created. Yep, it did create it, right? So the code that I just showed you in slides is exactly what I've used here, right? And this is the GUI that's running, it's connected, and I can also look at different auth connections that I have here. And again, the transport layer can be what it's using can be detected right here. Uh, let's go back to our slideshow. So this is where we're at, and you can always restart and reconfigure it here. The fun part is if you all are wondering where you use it from, you usually use it from Cloud Code. So what you have to do it to use, again, don't worry if I'm going too fast. I'm going to give you all plenty of time to do this with me when we are doing the hands-on agent exercise in the next stream. Okay, so the next stream is going to be tad longer anyway. I might go by like 20-25 minutes, so we will cover it up there, right? So once you do that, what you can do is come here. You see Ava has been connected here, right? And where I can usually see and how I connect it to this is by adding it to the configuration, right? So when you go to developer, you see this is where it is, and when I click on edit config and I go ahead and edit this configuration is where I can add additional tools. So this is what my config right now looks like. I have added all my tool here. And when I do that, it loads the server, the local MCP server into my Cloud Code, and I can use it right here from my account. It shows up in my connector as well. Make sense, everyone? Does it look exciting? We're going to be doing all of this. We're going to complete this whole thing later. So before we move into me giving you all resources for the next stream, because we will be doing a lot of hands-on and I really want you all to come prepared for that. Uh, let's talk about A2A versus MCPs. Do you all have any questions about MCP server? We will be using this documentation itself to go through the whole thing, create an MCP server from scratch, and then use it to create an entire agent. Any questions? Any doubts? What I do expect y'all to do, I'm going to send y'all a list of the things that I expect y'all to complete before y'all come. So definitely install Cloud Code Desktop. Sorry, not Cloud, just Cloud Desktop. It'll be easier for y'all to adjust the config. Make sure y'all have some kind of a code editor. Make sure y'all have GitHub. And yeah, that's pretty much it. The rest of the things we will go on. I will also show y'all how to set up the Google Auth to connect the thing. Let me see if I can pull up my VS Code to show you all what it looks like, right? So let me see if I can pull this up for you. So for all the things that I was running earlier, so you can see that the UI is telling us that received post for the specific ID. We have a virtual environment running here, and to connect it to the Google Auth, we did this, where we ran the auth.py to connect it to the Gmail draft sender, which is why my local MCP GUI is able to make those draft emails. So we will go through every step and work on it together. Okay. This should be fairly easy to do for everyone. And then we'll create an agent out of this. So we'll trigger this server on a specific command or as a tool call. Okay. Lovely. Great. So before we continue, let's talk about, so we spoke about MCP. We will create a server. I showed you what a running MCP server looks like. More than that, We spoke about how an agent is different from an LLM, and we spoke about how MCP servers are one key tool or a key protocol that comes into the picture when you want very, very specific agents, right? So, what is the difference between A2A and Model Context Protocol, right? So, there's another protocol called the A2A protocol, developed by Google, developed and maintained by Google. I think it's also open source, and the difference is the idea for A2A is a step further than MCP. So you first have the MCP, which is helping LLM use different tools. After that, let's say you want this agent to talk to another agent, which has a different set of toolings. That is where A2A comes into the pictures. Another quick thing I want to really mention that we will be looking at in an hour and a half, is skills. Have you all heard of skills.md? Yet. Yet. So the idea behind skills is, okay, you can have a very, very good model and you can give it all the tools you want. But now, where the context fails is in the experience, right? So the question when they were releasing skills, they asked is, if you wanted to do your taxes, whom would you trust? This mathematician with you know 500 IQ, not that that's possible, but like a very high IQ, or a tax accountant with like 30 years of experience? Which one would you choose, right? Even though this person, the first model, is extremely smart, you, for something like tax, which is a pretty complex process, you would choose experience, right? So the skills is basically a layer of additional context that you can give your agents now, specifically for skills, right? For experience, right? So you can basically say that, give it an entire experience context with another skills.md file, and it gives that layer of context that's usually missing when you want to do like very complex stuff with your agent with multiple tools, where keeping the context in the tooling layer can get very, very tiring for the agent, and they usually, that's when the hallucination and the dropping of information happens. So we will talk about skills in the next session. Any questions until then? Anything I can help you all prepare? So definitely go through what are cloud skills. We will be using them here. And yeah, if you want to test out some MCP servers, I would recommend trying the Zomato MCP server. Did you all know Zomato released an MCP server? So I wanted to do a demo about that earlier during this, where we just use an MCP server, but it was getting a little tricky with showing addresses. So I was like, maybe something else next time. But cool. So, folks, I will see y'all in a couple of hours for the next stream, where we're actually going to build out an entire agent using all the things that we just learned about the MCP server. So, in that, we will also build our own server and use it to create an agent. Awesome. Any questions I can help y'all with? No questions. Great. So, we will then see you. I would recommend checking out. I'm so bad. This is not a question you're supposed to ask me. No, you can ask me. I'm just not good at keeping time. Let's look at schedule. So the next session is going to be at 5:30 p.m. IST. So I'm going to drop a link to that as well for y'all. And for the sake of sanity, I won't drop the whole thing. So let's just drop this. Yes, I am excited about it as well. I like to keep things bite sized, like extremely bite sized, especially because when you're starting out with complex concepts, they can pile up really quickly. So we'll keep it again very simple in the next session, do a hands on, and then I'll again give you a bunch of resources to keep at it. Cool, folks. So I'm going to close the stream and I will see y'all in a few hours for the much cooler session. Lovely. And if y'all end up building anything by them or reading anything, definitely share about it. Learning in public is always great. Do tag me as well. I would love to share what y'all are building. I'm so glad you think so. Great. I will see you all in a few hours. I'm super excited to show you all some very cool stuff. If you all want to look at it, just a quick sneak peek into what we'll be doing. Ah, so many tabs open. We will be looking at the Open AI agent workflow builder. Nope. I had it. Uh, there we go. So we're going to use this also for a quick this. Let me send you the link to this for y'all to be prepared. Okay, so we will use this and we'll use our own MCP server here to build some cool stuff. All right, great. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and y'all can go ahead, explore some of the tools that I've shared. Look at skills. It's the new and upcoming thing that everyone's going to be talking about soon. And yeah, I'll see you all in a few hours.